I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money, and I'm sure they're going to pay. We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
By the way, that's not how tariffs work. They don't pay them. They're paid here in the United States.
That's not how the force works.
Hey all, welcome back. Welcome to today's segment. I hope you're all having a great day. Well, here we are, a full segment. Now, today is going to be detailed, but we're going to try and break this down into 4 parts. This first part here is going to be our introduction to what this segment is going to be. And it is needed for the sake of the entire segment. Number 1, okay, we are going to be going over tariffs. What are tariffs? Well, they're very simple. You saw the little scroll at the very beginning of the segment. It's just a tax on imported goods. That's simple. Now, if you look at it, every single one of us pay a tariff all the time, no matter what. We go to the store, we buy the $140 40-inch Chinese TV from Walmart, and we pay a tax on it. Well, we pay taxes on that purchase. That's essentially it's a tariff. It's a tax. So that's how simplified this stuff can be. But also at the very beginning of this segment, you saw the CNN analyst talk about how the tariff or the duty rates are passed along to you and I. That's not how it works. It's what they present is a way oversimplified version of it, as I was explaining to you, going to Walmart and buying that 40-inch TV. That's not how it works. So what gives me the credentials to refute this and refute what the media is saying about how prices are going to skyrocket, or that the next time I go to the store, I'm not going to be able to afford the products I want to buy? Well, for years now, I've been telling you guys that I am a karaoke host, and all I do is host karaoke on the weekends at a local bar. Well, that's my little side hustle. My real 9-to-5 job is I am an import analyst. I work for one of the top 5 largest global logistics companies in the world. I have been working in this industry for 32 years. I have imported products, literally handwritten on paper, to today where we're submitting everything electronically, like real human beings. I've dealt with the Food and Drug Administration, the EPA, NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Association. You guys should be familiar with it. You go get your license plate every year and all the good stuff, your tabs. That's NHTSA. Now, there's other government agencies that are out there, like APHIS, which have to do with, pesticides or pests in like wood packaging, stuff like that. There's chemicals that are part of the EPA, like TSCA, Toxic Substance Chemicals Act. You have all these different associations that have their hands in all of these transactions. So what the point of this segment is going to simplify it. How do you really import something into the United States? Who is responsible for the tariffs? Does it actually get passed along to you or I when we go to the store? Are some of these items that are imported brought in under free trade agreement? Is what the media telling you a lie? That's what we're going to cover. I'm going to take you through the basics, and we're even going to go over a couple products. I'm going to show you some of the books or digital books that we have to use as tools to handle these imports, to give you an idea of what it really is. That's today's segment. So I want you guys to stick around and remember everything that I am presenting to you is available to you as well. All of the links will be down in the body of this, upload. And of course, feel free to research it yourself. Now, the numbers that I'm going to present to you are numbers that are provided by Grok. Grok is an AI assistant, and it's more or less like ChatGPT. You can type in your question or give it its direction of what you're looking for, and it'll provide you that information. And today's information that I'm presenting is very simple. What percentage of the United States imports are from Canada, China, and Mexico? So all of these numbers I present to you are based off of that simple question. Also, I had Grok break it down by percentage. What fields, what commodities are regularly imported into the United States? And when we really get into that detail, you are going to be surprised that if you go to the store next time, if those prices are increased, it's not because of these new tariffs. It's because the company just can raise prices. It has nothing to do with the tariffs. So let's get into it. Stick around. Hopefully, I can make this as interesting as possible and maybe alleviate some of your fears for next time you go to the store. So let's get to it. All right. Stick around. All right, y'all, here we go. Custom Brokerage 101. Class is in session. I'm going to keep it simple. Believe it or not, many of you out there already have experience in customs brokerage. If you've ever bought anything from Amazon, Temu, AliExpress, any of your digital shopping platforms, you're already fairly familiar with what goes on, and you don't even know it. Simple. You get your package, you open up your envelope or box, and there is this little piece of paper that usually accompanies your purchase. It has the name of the company that you bought your product from. It has your name and address on it because you purchased it, you received it. Also, there is a brief description of what you bought, generally how many and how much you paid. That right there is halfway to an import invoice. Now, what we're going to do is I stated that we're going to be going through, Canada, Mexico, and China and go over how many, what their percentages are of what they import into the States. Well, we're going to start with the neighbors to the north, Canada. And we're going to just kind of give you a quick rundown of how you would just import a basic commodity from Canada to the United States, what is required and what you have to do so. So using your digital online shopping experience as a guide, you say you're an American company. You want to import a whole bunch of widgets. And there is a Canadian company that sells these widgets at $3 a piece. You see that price and you're like, wow, that's really cheap because I sell these same widgets here in my store for $5. Now, so American company says, I think I'm going to order 1,000 of them. So what happens is American company contacts Canadian company and says, I would like to order 1,000 of these. They can do it online or over the phone, or however they place their orders. When that happens, an invoice is generated. On that invoice, because this is going to be going through customs, it's going to be imported into the United States, the invoice must state who the seller is, like who the exporter is, the shipper, which is the Canadian company, and who is going to receive the shipment of widgets, which is the American company, their name and address. Now, not only does that have to be on there, but a description of the goods, description of the widgets. They also have to have on there the country of manufacture or country of origin of these widgets, the quantity, the value, even they may even have like the price per piece. the weight of the entire shipment of widgets, the funds. Is the value in Canadian funds or United States dollar funds? Now, one of the most important features on this invoice is basically claiming who is the responsible party. When I say responsible party, I am talking about which of the two parties is responsible for basically duty, brokerage, and taxes. Now, when I refer to duties, brokerage, and taxes, it's more or less tariffs. Okay. The duty rate is determined by the tariff that is assigned to the particular product. Now, the brokerage fees are basically the fees that go to the company that handles the documentation and acts as the go-between between the importer and customs. So what happens is the importer and shipper, or the customers of the brokerage firm, they present their documentation of what this shipment contains. The broker analyzes this shipment, submits all the information to customs, assigns tariff numbers to the products, and by assigning those tariff numbers, the duty rate on that particular product is determined. It could be a percentage, anywhere from 1%, 0.1%, all the way up to 200%. Now, Donald Trump has instituted a 25% additional duty rate on items imported from Canada made of steel and aluminum. Now, we are dealing with plastic widgets in this case. Now, since they are plastic widgets, guess what? That 25% additional duty rate does not apply because they are not aluminum and they are not steel. So, when the media comes to you, like on, doing their thing, and they talk about these 25% tariff rates are going to increase the costs on everything, and whenever I go to the store, I'm not going to be able to afford anything. You're not going to be able to afford anything. That is a lie, because that's not how it works. As you see, as I'm telling you, these items, these particular widgets, are made of plastic. The additional tariff rates are assigned to items that are steel and aluminum, not plastic. So did your plastic widget go up in price? No, it did not. Also, where the media gets it wrong is that when there is duties or tariffs assigned to particular products, you are the one that pays for it. I'm the one who pays for it. When we go to the store, those prices, the increase in those prices are going to be reflecting on how we purchase our items. That is not always the case. Same situation we have, in this case, the Canadian company who is exporting widgets. We have the American company who is importing widgets. Now, they have to determine which party is going to be responsible for those duty, brokerage, and taxes. Now, if the Canadian company who is exporting those widgets says, you know what, as part of the cost, which we've already worked into our product, we will act as the importer of record. So we will take responsibility for the duty, brokerage, and taxes. That means if any duties or brokerage fees are assessed on this shipment, the cost goes to the shipper who is based in Canada, not the company based in the United States. Now, either party can be the importer of record, but that is where the media gets it wrong again. Not every transaction is billed to the American company. So if the Canadian company says, yes, we are going to be the importer of record, we accept these charges, they're the ones who pay for the duty. They're the one who pays the tariffs, not the American company. So guess what? Your widgets did not go up in price. Your widgets stayed the same. Now it even gets better. Let's say that the shipper, who is the importer of record, partakes in a free trade agreement with the United States, the USMCA. They qualify these widgets under USMCA to be even duty-free. Whoa, hold on, it gets better. So now you have the assessed duty of whatever these widgets are, the brokerage fees, all going back to the shipper who agreed to be the importer of record. Now, with this trade agreement, USMCA, there is no duty on those plastic widgets. So the cost went down. So the only cost that the importer of record has in this case is the brokerage fees, which could be whatever the brokerage fee is, whatever their agreement is or their contract is. Now, the U.S. company paid $3 a piece for these widgets and can sell them for $5 a piece as they always have. Did your price go up? No, it did not. Now, that is basic importing into the United States. Now, there is another solution or transaction that could possibly happen. The American company wants to be the importer of record of these widgets. So, just so happens that since they're the importer, they're going to accept the charges for duty, brokerage, and taxes. Now, these same parts, these same widgets, the American company has them qualified for USMCA. Guess what? That means they can pay the $3 for each one of these, have them imported, and instead of paying the duty on them, they're covered under USMCA. They're duty free. No tariffs. Well, I mean, there's still tariffs, but I'm just saying the duty rate is 0. So the only thing the American company is paying as well is the brokerage fees, whoever the broker is to import the products. And they can still sell their product at $5 a widget, because if it's a $50 transaction for $3,000 worth of widgets and they're going to sell them for $5 a piece, it does not affect the cost of the widget. Now, with the 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel, does that affect it? No, because they're still plastic widgets. It only affects things that are steel and aluminum. So, on that is importing 101, the very basic thing that you need to know about importing. Now, I'm going to show you something. This right here. Let me get this set up here. There we go. This right here is the 2025 Revision 5 US HTS Harmonized Schedule. When I say Revision 5, well, it's because this book goes through revisions every few months, every quarter. And this book here is like the holy grail of tariffs. This is where all the tariffs for things coming into the United States are stored. There are 99 chapters in this book. And each one of these chapters is broken down by commodity or class. And what happens is the United States government, the IRS, okay, the Internal Revenue Service, basically assigns a number to everything. Everything on this planet has a number. And based on how CBP sees that item, it is determined what that number is in this book. Everything we know of, even in front of you right now, look to your right, left, down, up, whatever, it has a number. Even you have a number. You have your Social Security number. Even the government gave you a number. That's yours. So, what we are going to do is I'm going to tell you guys, and you're not going to believe what you're about to hear. Okay? So we have our tariff book. This is our book. This is where we go when we have to determine a tariff number to assign to a product. And that tariff number, what we'll do is we'll just give you a page. This here is a list of tariffs. Right now, we're under screws, bolts, nuts, coach screws, hooks, rivets, cotters, cotter pins, washers, including spring washers, and similar articles of iron and steel. That is what this is. So, nuts and bolts. That's what this particular heading in this chapter covers. To give you an idea, this is how detailed it can get. So we have bolts, where I'm highlighted here, you can see on screen, 73, 18, 15, 20. bolts and their nuts or washers entered or exported in the same shipment. So that means nuts and bolts. Now they go into as detailed as like if the head size is 6 millimeters or greater, less than 6 millimeters. They even get into length, the type of steel, how it's threaded, the type of head. Is it a hex head? Is it a spanner? Is it, a socketed? It gets detailed. So that is where it gets complicated. But as you can see here, it would be your right here. I'm going to highlight it. 73, 18, 15, 20. Duty rate. 3. But designated in this chapter, chapter 73, these are articles of, as I said, iron and steel. So anything in this chapter based on the new tariffs that have been, that are going into effect on the 2nd, this would fall into that category, steel. Now, there are different tools that we can use to determine what additional tariff is needed to assign the 25%. But now, the reason why we're getting into this is just a basic example. And what I got here are the numbers, which I'm going to share with you right across the screen here. This is Canadian imports into the United States by percentage. Now, what we do is we import from all over the world. Every country, just about. Anything that has anything to offer, we'll probably import it. Now, get this. You're hearing about these tariffs on Canadian iron and steel. And then, of course, the vehicle one that goes into effect also on Monday. In your thoughts, when you go to the store or you're buying something, how many of those items do you think we really import from Canada? Honest question. How much do you think we actually import from Canada? Like in our daily lives, our consumables, down to everything. How much do you think we actually import? Now, mind you, we're considering, in comparison to Canada, we're a very large country. Okay. We have 340 million people in this country. Okay. Canada, 15, 20 million people, maybe. Now think about this. The United States gross imports from Canada only equals 12.9%. 12.9% of our imports come from Canada. And what we're going to do even further is we're going to break this down. Check this out. Now, this is by percentage of that 12.9%. How much of that 12.9% is what we import in this particular class? The majority of it that we import is mineral fuels and oils at 31%. So 31% of that 12.9% is fuel and energy. That's quite a bit. Now get this. The next largest are vehicles and parts of vehicles. Guess how much of that 12.9% is those commodities? 13.6%. Now that's where we're getting hit hardest, right? As a consumer, all these vehicles coming from Canada, all these parts. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Because they're going to add that 25% onto our vehicle costs and parts. Not necessarily. Not necessarily, my friends, because when you get into vehicles themselves, okay, yes, the vehicles may be subject to the 25%, but with meetings between the United States, Canada, Mexico, they put in place that USMCA is still valid on vehicles. So guess what? As of right now, the 25% does not pertain to vehicles being imported in the United States from Canada or Mexico. Now, what about the parts? Well, it depends on what the part is. Well, we have automotive fasteners that are made of aluminum or steel. Well, if the fasteners or the clips or anything that you're using is made of aluminum or has a percentage of aluminum in it or steel, it's possible that you could be paying 25% more. But it's not on the entire part value. It is on the percentage of the aluminum or steel that's in that part. So if you have a $50 wire harness that's mostly made of plastic and has aluminum or copper like clips that hold it in place, the importer or the responsible party has to determine how much of that wire harness is made of aluminum. What percentage of that value is made of aluminum? And guess what? That percentage of the value is what you pay 25% on. So let's say that the clip is only worth $3 on a $50 part. You're paying 25% duty on the $3, not the value of the entire part. That's how it works. So the idea of costs going up to you as the consumer is not because of the tariffs. It's because of maybe the importer or the company that is producing these vehicles. They're just going to raise prices for the sake of raising prices. It's not to cover this because these increases are negligible. Well, what about the iron and steel? Well, get this. Aluminum and aluminum articles, okay, which means the aluminum used in possibly body panels, chassis, 2.9%. 2.9% of that 12.9% of items that we import from Canada is aluminum. So you're going to tell me because 2.9% of these products, which is only 12.9% of the total imports, you're going to justify raising prices 25% across the board? You can't. They're negligible numbers. And that's why it makes me angry every time I turn on the TV and you have these news outlets talking about these tariffs. They don't know how they work. This is how they work. The biggest effect is when we get into some of the other countries, which we'll get to. So yes, so get this. So vehicles and parts, 13.6%. Machinery and medical appliances, 8.2%. Wood and wood products, 4.8%. The cost of lumber. Everyone's always talking about the cost of lumber, how it's going up. We could get into lumber, Canadian lumber, when it's imported in the United States, but there is a whole new different aspect to it. And it's something that is going to be way too complicated for you guys because you're getting into quotas and anti-dumping and all that stuff. And it gets really, really down into a lot of legalese. So we're going to let that one go. But lumber has always been expensive regardless. Plastic and articles of plastic, 3.6%. Aluminum and aluminum articles, 2.9%. Agricultural products, we're only looking at 2.4%. Electrical machinery and equipment. So we're looking at basics plus parts, 2.2%. Precious metals and stones, 1.9%. And fertilizers, 1.5%. So if anyone's yelling to you and telling you that the Canadian importing of fertilizers is going to drive prices up, no, it's not. Because it's 1.5% of their imports from Canada is fertilizer. Less than 1%. It's 1%. It's not going to increase the volume. It's not going to increase the prices of your fertilizers. It's BS. If they raise the prices, it's because they can. That's it. It has nothing to do with tariffs. But that's the Canadian side. So think about that. The United States imports 12.9% from Canada. That's it. That's it. And I've given you the numbers of what the largest portion of it is. It's energy. Everything else, yeah, okay, your next biggest is vehicle and vehicle parts. But I'm going to show you something. We're going to do something since we're there on vehicles and vehicle parts. We're going to switch over here, back to the screen here. Let me find the correct chapter. I have several chapters open up here. Let's see, it's aluminum. Here we go. Right here. This is where I like to have fun. Okay, other mountings and fittings and similar articles suitable for motor vehicles, parts thereof. Okay. Iron or steel or aluminum or zinc. Okay. Pneumatic cylinders for lifting and lowering, dampering, counterbalancing, or other. You have a vehicle. You're in your vehicle. You're sitting in your driver's seat. Take a look around. How many fasteners or brackets or fittings or clips that are used to hold on pieces of your car? There's probably a chance that they're made of one of those three things. Here's one for you. Now, with this particular classification, all right, you have a shipment full of clips and mountings for a vehicle. All right, this particular classification, 830230-3060, will flag for what is called IEPA. That is the new tariff for 25% on aluminum and steel, or on aluminum items. Excuse me. Okay, it's going to flag for potential IEPA. It's section 232. And what it is with this particular classification, it's telling you that it could either be iron or steel or aluminum. Now get this. An automotive fastener, a fitting, okay? Now it only flags in this case for aluminum. So us, as a customs broker, we see that. It gets flagged for section 232 IEPA. We have to reach out to the importer, whoever is responsible for the duty and brokerage and taxes of the shipment. We reach out to them and request, can you advise us if this particular part is made of steel, aluminum, or iron? And what they'll do is they'll say it's either aluminum, steel, or iron. So if it's aluminum, then yes, you're going to pay the additional tariff. But because of this classification, if it's made of steel, there is no 25% duty. It's just based on the wording of the rule. So if it's aluminum, you're paying 25%. If it's steel or any other metal, there is no 25% duty. That's how it works. And if it was an aluminum fitting, then yes, you would pay 25% on that aluminum fitting. So if it's 25%, and we'll just say that the fitting costs $1, you're paying $1.25. So of course, we're dealing with bigger numbers at times, but for the most part, you're coming back with these fittings and they're steel. Yes, they could be aluminum, but in this case, they're not. Guess what happens? They still come across as a 2% duty rate if they are not qualified for USMCA. Now, if they're qualified for USMCA and made of steel, there is zero duty. That's how it works. The media is wrong. So, that is Canada. And that's what we're going to end this section. That is Canadian products coming into the States. So tell me, with those small numbers, how much do you think your prices should go up? And be real about it. Not because the tariffs or the duty rates, if anything goes up, it's not because of these. It is because the companies want to increase prices anyway. And of course, it all comes down to what are the materials being used in making these products? Are they aluminum? Are they steel? If so, what's the percentage? And you're only paying the additional 25% on the percentage of the material value that is under that tariff. That is how it works. So we're going to end it here. Let's move on to Mexico. All right, kids, here we go. On to Mexico. So, for the record, I'm a fan of tacos. I really like tacos. And many of you out there know that I myself am Mexican. I'm not very good at it, but I am Mexican. So, let's get down to it. And yeah, Mexico. It's going to get interesting. All right, kids. Mexican imports into the United States account for 15.8% of American imports. That is it. So between Canada and Mexico, we're looking at 1/3 of all imports coming into the States. But how does that affect you? Very simple. What is the largest segment of imports that come from Mexico? Vehicles and vehicle parts at 25.3%. Same thing again as it is with the Canadian imports. If they're qualified for USMCA, 25% doesn't matter. Also, when it comes to parts, that is where it gets important. Parts. Again, here, we're open to another chapter of our HTS schedule. Right here, we're in chapter 87. Automotive. Now, we have here a couple of tariff numbers, or what I like to refer to as classifications, and their duty rates. Now, the first one we're going to look at, since we're dealing with automotive industries, is the first one, 8708 29 51 60. 8708 29 is, let's see where we're at. Where are we? There we go. Basically, auto body parts, body stampings, fenders, quarter panels, stuff like that. Now, this one here, with that classification, 8708 29 51 60, also flags for potential Section 232, the IEPA tariffs. Now, what's important here, again, when you're dealing with building a motor vehicle, not regular passenger vehicle, most of your body panel parts are going to be classified under 8708 29 51 60. This flags also for the aluminum IEPA. And what in this case, as we do with the Canadian tariff classifications for the fasteners, we have to reach out to the importer and verify. Is this particular body part made of aluminum or steel? Or what are the materials? Could it be carbon fiber? Now think about that. If that body part is made of carbon fiber, is it going to be subject to the 25% aluminum or steel tariff that's being assigned? No, it is not. Now, say we reach out to the importer, who is the, manufacturer of these parts, and ask them, hey, are these quarter panels made of steel, aluminum? What do you got? And he comes back and says, oh, these are made of steel. They're not aluminum. Guess what? Siri is trying to talk to us. Siri, I'm not talking to you. But anyway, as we go, 5160. All right, they are subject to the aluminum 232 IEPA tariff. Now, only if that particular tariff or that particular part is made of aluminum. Now, when we go back to the importer and say, hey, what are the materials of this part? And they tell us, oh, it's made of steel. Well, guess what? It only flags for Section 232 aluminum. So since it's made of steel and not aluminum, it is not subject to the 25% duty rate. Hold on, it gets even better. Guess what? If this particular importer from Mexico is part of USMCA and has these parts qualified, and these are made of steel, guess what? As you can see here, 5160 has a 2.5% duty rate if it's not qualified for any trade agreement. Now, if they have USMCA and it's made of steel, guess what they pay in duty? 0. All they're paying for is their brokerage fees. That's it. That's all. Now, we'll say that this particular body panel is a mixture of steel and it has aluminum fasteners to hold it in place, or grommets, or, just something that is used, it's like a rust preventer. Okay. And it's made of aluminum and it's assembled to the body with, regular fasteners and all that stuff. So what has to happen is the importer has to determine how much aluminum is used in the production of this part. What is the value of that aluminum? Is it $50, $10? Say the quarter panel is a $250 part, and it's using $15 worth of aluminum, which are these fasteners or these brackets that are in place on these quarter panels that are used to fasten it to the body of the car. Do they pay 25% on the entire value of that quarter panel on that $250? No. They only pay the 25% on the value of the aluminum present in that part. Again, the increase is negligible. That is how it works. But what about other auto body parts? Okay, how about brakes? Brake pads, carbon fiber, ceramic, steel, the rotors. What about those? Well, guess what? Those classifications don't flag for Section 232 and are covered under USMCA if they're being imported from US or from Canada or Mexico. So the only thing that they are not paying 2.5% duty, because if they qualify for USMCA, duty free. Even if they don't qualify for USMCA, they're only paying what they normally would pay anyway at 2.5% duty, which is what they've probably been being imported in the past anyway. So when it comes to all of this automotive stuff, how they're talking about all these prices are going to go up. No. If they go up, it's not because of tariffs. They're going up because the companies just want to raise prices. It has nothing to do with tariffs. Now that's Mexico. Let's continue. What else does Mexico import? Based on that 15.8%, number that they import into the United States. 15.8% of our imports come from Mexico. What do they import? The biggest segment is automotive and vehicle parts at 25.3%. The next biggest segment is electrical machinery and equipment at 18.8%. After that, machinery and mechanical appliances, 12.8%. Now, when you get into your mechanical appliances and stuff like that, yeah, you're probably looking at a little bit more aluminum because you're looking at your stoves, your refrigerators, stuff like that. Okay, but what you don't understand is just because a product is made of a certain material doesn't mean it's going to fall under the Section 232 tariff extension for the 25%. It doesn't mean that. I'm going to show you because we're going to get there to another thing. I'm going to get there to another thing. You're going to find this just amazing. Okay. Now, their next one is their mineral fuels and oils, only 4.9%. Optical and medical instruments, 4%. I'll be honest with you, I thought that would be bigger because a lot of Americans go down there for medical procedures and all kinds of different experimental medicines. And I figured it really would be a lot higher on the medical instruments, believe it or not. Agricultural products, 3.6%. So don't worry about it. Your avocados aren't going up. You'll be able to make your avocado toast. Furniture and bedding, 2.4%. Iron and steel products, guess what? Negligible, 2%. All right. Precious metals and jewelry, 1.6%. So when you really look at the combined imports from Mexico, the largest segment very simply is the automotive segment. And based on the free trade agreements we have and the language that is used in these rulings and the way things are classified with these tariff numbers, the percentages of everything going up by 25% is wrong. It doesn't work that way. All right. Sorry, you guys. Bad jump cut here, but there was stuff going on here that I had to take care of. Cats were making a mess and being a little loud. But anyway, back to where we were. We were discussing Mexico and their actual imports, what we actually import from Mexico. And yeah, all of those numbers are percentages of that 15.8% of material that we import. The largest segment, is vehicles and parts. Now, here we are with the vehicles and parts still. or the parts of vehicles. As you get into it, just because, these new tariffs are into effect doesn't mean, your costs are going to go up. It's simple. Like I've explained to you with the auto body parts and even with the parts of brakes, stuff like that. Now, what's really going to throw you off is one of the largest expenses when it comes to your vehicle is if you have to replace the engine. Now, many of you out there, I have some mechanic friends and all that stuff that know their way around a car or a truck, whatever. And, they can tell you, most of you out there even know that some engines that go into your passenger vehicles are made of aluminum. Now, engines, one of the largest costs to a vehicle. Let's take a look at this. All right. We are now going into chapter 84 of the harmonized tariff book. Now, chapter 84, this particular section, 8408, compression, ignition, internal combustion piston engines, diesel or semi-diesel engines. Okay. So we are looking at engines. Now, many of you know that engines they could be made of aluminum, the engine block, all aluminum. Okay. There are other aluminum parts in and around your engine. Well, right here, we are looking at a complete engine assembled on a crate, ready to go, throw it inside a truck or a car, semi, whatever you want to put it in. Right here, 8408 20 2000. To be installed in vehicles of subheading 87121, 22, 23, 24, 29, or heading 8702, 83, or 4. All right. They're talking about passenger vehicles, semi trucks, pickup trucks, whatever, SUVs. These are completed engines. They have aluminum parts. They have steel parts. They get imported from Mexico. They get imported from Canada. Guess what? These do not flag for Section 232 IEPA. Why? They have aluminum. They have steel. Well, maybe because it's a fully functional, completed item. The way the Section 232 IEPA rules are discussed and how the 25% duty rate is applied to certain items or these tariffs determines what the item is, how it's made, what it's made of, the percentage of the materials used. Is it a complete item or is it only a partial item? All of that comes into the factor of determining what tariff to assign to an item for the import. So bare bones, when the media tries to tell you that you pay for it, that's not true. Because this year, if that engine qualifies for USMCA and comes from Canada or Mexico, there's no 25% duty rate on it. Even if it wasn't covered under USMCA, all they would be paying is their standard 2.5% duty, which they were paying prior to any of this going into effect. So them telling you that your prices are going to go up because of this is wrong. That's Mexico. Now, I think I've already gone through the other items that they actually import, and we're going to leave it at that. So that is Mexico. We've dealt with Canada. Tell me, how are your prices going up? Everything is based on the percentage or the flat out material that is being used or being imported. Now, if it's raw steel, yes, you're going to be paying 25%. Now, if it's raw aluminum, yes, you're going to be paying 25%. Now, if you're importing a part that has steel or aluminum content in it, you're only paying the 25% on the aluminum or steel content, not the value of the entire part. And in many cases, as I've shown you from the Canada one with the brackets or the fasteners, if it's not made of a particular material and it doesn't flag for it, you're not getting the 25%. How it works. And they want to scare you with that information. That's all it is. That is tariffs. Now, we're going to end it here finally for Mexico, and we're going to stop it. And we are going to jump over and do China. Now, this is where things really start to change. Be right back. All right, here we go. We're talking about China. Okay. When it comes to China, the United States imports roughly 14.5% of their items come from China, which you would think, many of us would think it would be more than that because of Amazon, Temu, AliExpress, all those big, things, the super cheap, toys that you can buy for like $5 and it takes a month to get to you. Well, these are the items we're talking about now. And many of you guys know that even the government has always had issues with copyright infringement with the Chinese government. All kinds of different, just pirating, all that kind of pain in the butt stuff. But when it comes to Chinese goods, the United States only imports 14.5% of all of their imported goods come from China. Now, if you stack that on top of Mexico and Canada, you're looking at a little over a third of all of our imports come from those three countries. Now, what's interesting is this one really did surprise me about the percentages of what comes in from China. Now, mind you, this is based on the 14.5% of imports that come from China. This is the majority of what each segment is. Now, the largest segment of material that we import from China is electrical machinery and equipment. We're talking like computers, graphics cards, stuff, like electronics, your cell phones, stuff like that. That is the largest segment of the stuff that we import from China. So what we do, and what many of you don't even realize, in a lot of cases, okay, this 25% duty rate that's being applied to Chinese goods, believe it or not, most of the stuff is higher than that already. There are, duties in place that cover anywhere from 25% to 200%. And then all we're doing in this case is adding another 25%. So this 25% going on to additional, the Chinese, additional 25% going on to the Chinese goods that are imported. Honestly, you're not even going to notice it. You won't even notice it because of the cost that it takes them to produce these items is, well, it's super cheap. You have, a government that controls the, production of all of the items that are there. Even if you have private companies there, the government still controls that production. So we know it's a communist nation. They control everything, but it's a interesting combination of, capitalism and communism mixed together. And that's unfortunately here in the United States, there are a lot of people that kind of fall on that want us to be that way. No, thank you. But anyway, this is the percentage of the items that come in from China. So electrical machinery and equipment, 29.2%. That's talking about like your computer information or even little things like this, headphones, a lot of your basic cheap lamps that you get off of like a lot of your online stores and stuff like that. Machinery and electrical appliances, 17.3%. Toys, games, and sports equipment. I thought this would be a lot higher, but it's not. It's only 5.4% of that 14.5% of that is toys and games and sporting goods. I thought it would be a lot higher. Now, furniture and bedding, 4.8%. I'm surprised that's not higher either. Plastic and plastic articles, 3.9%. Yeah, you would think that, it'd be a lot higher than that, but it's not. I mean, you look at these segments of, imports, it's really like when you go to the store, to me, the biggest portion of it is that electrical machinery and equipment, like your technology. The next is vehicles and parts of vehicles, only 3.2% of that 14.5. So won't even affect the automotive industry. Okay. So then you're looking at apparel and textiles, 3%, which I'm not surprised there because I think everything I have on right now came from Malaysia. Let's see, optical and medical instruments, only 2.6%. I thought that would be higher also, but it is not. Iron and steel products. Take a guess. Take a guess. I'll give you a second. Only 2.2% of the imports are Chinese steel and iron products. Amazing. And the lowest one of all, believe it or not, is lithium ion batteries at 1.9%. Now, when you look at that list, it's, how does the Section 232 or IEEPA tariff, the 25% tariff, affect it? Well, I actually have an exercise for us, and we're going to do it right here. Right here. It is like a box of screws. Telefoner, black computer screws and standoffs, an assortment kit. So any of you tech nerds out there that actually build your own computers and all that good stuff, you probably have a box of these laying around. Now, the reason why we're using this as an example is because if you look back on the very back, I don't know if it'll come through or not. We'll see if it does. Right there. Made in China. So these are screws. These are steel fasteners. And guess what? Because they're from China, they are going to be subject to 25% additional in tariff. So what we're going to do is really show you how the IEEPA works if it affects your part. So what we have here, it's a kit. Now, when it comes to assigning a tariff number or classification, when it comes to kits, you have to classify it based on the most important, I guess you would say, the most important function or the most important part of the kit. What gives it the kit? What is it for? So in this case, we have a box full of screws. They are not bolts. They are screws. Now, on the front of this, you will see, all right, you see there are various little measurements. You have a 6, you have a M5, M3, you have more M3s, and then you see the washers and the nuts are all 3s as well. Now, what that means is the 6 number refers to it as a metric screw. So in this case, we have a number 6 screw, which is a 6 millimeter, and it goes on. So the M3, M5 is telling you these are metric. These are metric screws. Now, the most important piece of this kit, what is the most important function of this kit? All right. So we see we have 6 metric screws that are 6 millimeters, but then we have a handful of 4 more screws that are labeled as 3 millimeter. Now, the washers and nuts that come with this are also 3 millimeters. So the primary fastener of this kit are the 3 millimeter screws. So in this case, instead of classifying this as a screw of 6 millimeters or more, we're going to classify this kit as a nuts, screws and washers and their, nuts as less than 6 millimeters. Now, because of the type of screw it is, determines on where it's going to be classified in our tariff book. So let's go back over to our tariff book. Okay, now we are in chapter 73. Okay, chapter 73 is for items of iron and steel. Now, what we are in is we're looking for fasteners. These are nuts and bolts or screws, whichever, we're going to determine which is. All right. Now, on the package, it clearly states screws with nuts and standoffs. So the nuts and standoffs are for 3 millimeters. So the 3 millimeters are going to be our primary classification. Now, let's go over here to our tariff book. We are looking for screws and nuts. Now, section 70 or chapter 7318 starts off with screws, bolts, nuts, coach screws, hooks, rivets, cotter pins, washers, including spring washers, and similar articles of iron and steel. Now, we have screws. So guess what? They're threaded right there underneath it. Threaded articles. Now, we have to determine, are these screws or bolts? Well, it says right here on the package, they're screws. Now, we know that these screws are 3 millimeters or they're less than 6 millimeters. So we are going to go down these headings and determine what is the proper tariff classification for this kit. Now, we get into the first part right here, 7318 1520. You go over to the side. Bolts and their nuts or washers entered or exported in the same ship. Well, right there, we know these are not bolts. These are screws. So we're going to come down another heading. Down to the next one, 7318 1540. Machine screws, 9.5 millimeters or more in length and 3.2 millimeters or more in diameter, not including cap screws. Well, we look at our package that gives us our measurements. Is it more in length than 9.5 millimeters? Well, if you look at these, it gives you the measurements. These are less than 9.5 millimeters. All right. And are they more, 3.2 millimeters more in diameter? Some of them are, yes, but it does not meet the expectations of the 9.5 millimeters. So we, again, cannot use this heading because the length does not meet the criteria of the heading. Now we come down. The next heading, 7318 50, studs. They're not studs, they're screws. So guess what we have to do again? Come down to the next heading. Now here we go. 7318, next one, screws, bolts, nuts, coach screws, screw hooks, rivets, cotter pins, washers, including spring washers, and similar articles of iron and steel. Continue. Threaded articles. Okay. Other screws and bolts, whether or not with their nuts or washers. Hey, we're on the right track. 7318 15. Okay. Having shanks or threads with a diameter of less than 6 millimeters. I think we're close. So we're 7318 15 60. Now, are any of these socket screws? Let's look at our package. No, there are no socket screws. So that means we go down to the next one. Are they other than socket screws? Yes. Now, are they made of stainless steel or are they made from a different kind of steel? Well, in this case, these are not stainless steel. These are carbon steel. So in this case, it will not be stainless steel other. We'll come down to the next one. It is other because they are carbon steel. So our classification for this kit is going to be screws, bolts, nuts, coach screws, screw hooks, rivets, other cotter pins, and washers, including spring washers and similar articles of iron and steel, threaded articles, other screws and bolts, whether or not with their nuts or washers. Well, we have nuts and washers in this group, but we know that the shanks or threads of the diameter are less than 6 millimeters because the majority of them are 3 millimeters. So they are not socket screws. They are other. They are not made of stainless steel. They are other. So our classification for these screws, 73, 18, 15, 60, 80, which gives us a duty rate of 6.2%. Now, this kit cost me $10. Normally, that right there, that 6.2% is already built into the price of this $10. Now, with the new IEPA or the Section 232 steel, since these are 100% steel, it is 25% additional duty on this kit when it's being sold. So 25% of $10 gets added to the cost of this particular kit moving forward. Now that will increase the cost to the consumer on certain items. That is how tariffs work. It's not going to be on every item that you buy. It is certain items. And in this case, it is steel fasteners. And what happens, that 25% is tacked on to the top of that 6.2. There is no free trade agreement between us and China. So regardless of what's imported from China, you are paying that designated duty rate and more than likely an additional 20 something percent, depending on what the article is. That is how tariffs works, my friends. It is not the information they're feeding you on, on TV or in the news. This is how it works. This is the real deal. This is every day. I'm transmitting this information every day to Customs and CBP to get this stuff into the country and get it so you can get it on your store shelves. That is what I do. So all of the arguments about how things are going to go up in price, it's negligible. It really is. I see it come through the border every single day. Yeah, there are a lot of articles that I see that pay the full 25%. But in those items, you are looking at minimal percentages of the amounts that are being imported into this country. That is how it works. But anyway, I hope it enlightened you a little bit and alleviates some of your fears about when you go to the store next and wonder if you're going to be able to afford something. You will. You will. You most certainly will. And the biggest benefit about adding these tariffs, onto these particular products and these commodities is it's really to bring these manufacturers back to the United States. Because you bring these manufacturers back to the United States, it's creating jobs for the public. And the only reason a lot of these companies do go overseas to produce these items is because even if producing them in the United States versus in Mexico or China or Canada, it's cheaper, even with the duty rates. That is why the additional duty rates have been put on top of these, like the 6.2% plus the 25%. That's why it's put on there. Because in China, you got someone that's working, making $3 or $4 an hour, and it's costing them, 5 cents a freaking, or $1 a kit. It's costing them $1 a kit to produce it, package it, and send it. And then they're only paying someone else, $3 an hour to do this all day. And you look at a country like that, you're basically on the verge of slave labor. There are no protections for workers, no unions to help these people. They're there all day. If they have to work, they're told they work, they go work. So you're taking a product like this that probably costs $4 to package, put together, and ship all together, and they're making a $6 and $7 profit on each one of these. And you look at the same thing for Mexico. Now, you look at all of these vehicles that are assembled in Mexico, American vehicles that are assembled in Mexico. You have a Mexican worker that's in a plant who's making $5 an hour. They're not part of a union either. Okay. So you have a $30,000 car that's being assembled in Mexico. For instance, my vehicle was assembled in Mexico. So I know this. And you're paying a worker $5 versus an American worker who has a union job, who you're paying $36 to $40 an hour on a line. Well, if you're a company, where are you going to build your car? It's going to cost me a non-union worker $5 an hour versus $36 to $40 an hour to a union worker here in the United States. Keeps the cost low, bring them back here. And if the manufacturing or the assembly plants are brought back in here, your prices are probably going to go up on your vehicles because you're looking at union dues. You got to pay the employees, and you got to have a living wage, especially, when you're, working in these environments. So if something along that comes along, then yes, you're going to be paying more. But the purpose of it is to really bring manufacturing back here to the United States. And personally, I'm for it because I'd rather see an American with a union job building my car than someone, under slave conditions getting only $5 and paying $30,000 for a car. But, if that's coming in here, I'd rather pay that money, from, to an American worker than, someone who's basically a slave. And that's really the purpose of all of this. And this is how it works. And you look at what, these companies are doing, can you really blame them? If I can have someone do it here for less than a quarter of what I'm paying someone here in the States, who are you going to pay? Right. So, I mean, it's going to be hit or miss. It's going to come down to really what commodity that, you're buying or importing. And there's just it comes down to the details, like what percentage of this particular part is this material, or what's its value. I mean, it's not just thrown out there and it's going to affect you. It's not. I mean, we may see some increases, here and there on certain items, but for the most part, everything's going to be fine, you guys. The only thing it's doing, it's creating more work for people like me. That's all it's doing. And taking a simple transaction and quadrupling the process. That's all it's done for me. I go to the grocery store, I don't see anything. I go to Walmart or go to whatever store, prices are the same. And believe it or not, folks, these tariffs have been in place since March 4th. March 4th. These have already been in place. And they're just going to expand to the European Union come the 2nd. That's it. So, anyway, that's it. That is importing into the United States, the process, how it's done, how tariffs are assigned. And yeah, so I hope it actually helped you out a little bit and you weren't bored too much. So, until next time, I'll talk to you guys later, and be good. I love yous.